My momentum trip was one of my favorite experiences in my whole life, and I'm so glad that I get to take this half an hour to be with everybody here. So there is a ton of difficult news about coronavirus and about COVID-19. I hope you saw Dr. M's video yesterday where he answered a lot of clinical questions that I'm getting from my patients as well. But what I want to talk to you about today is Shalom Bayit. There is an amazing opportunity in this experience. There's a lot of struggle, and I don't mean to minimize that or the risks or the fear at all. But boy, do we have an opportunity. Have you ever wished that the world would just slow down for 5 minutes so that you could have an important conversation or a fun moment or a relaxing opportunity with your family or for yourself? Now we've got it. We're going to talk today about how we talk to kids about what's going on and how we manage our own and help them manage their fear and uncertainty. Because even for kids who aren't paying attention to what's going on in the world, and if they're under 8, they might not be, but if they're over 8, you can be almost certain they are. This is a time when they're feeling our uncertainty and our concern. And they certainly, no matter how young they are, notice that things are different. Even our pets have noticed we're around a lot more than we used to be. I want us to think for just a little bit about what we want our kids to learn from this experience. Some of the best, most reassuring news about COVID-19 is that it is affecting physically our healthy kids the least, meaning they can catch it, and kids who are at high risk for other reasons are certainly at high risk from this of getting very ill. But there is a lower mortality rate. They are not getting as sick. Do you know what the biggest chance that we have for this is to teach? Because what we know for sure is that, please God, our kids will all live through this experience. They, in their lifetime, will experience other situations filled with fear and uncertainty. And what they're learning from us now is how to manage that. So we have to, as my mom of blessed memory would say, begin as we mean to go on. We have to begin, and the first thing I want to talk to you about in our 3 strategies is structure. So some of that structure, I'm sure you've heard people say, is about having a schedule. And, if having a schedule that you pretty much follow and is posted on the wall wasn't useful, then every kindergarten teacher in the world wouldn't do it. But they do, right? Because structure and what's called previewing, knowing what's coming up in a microcosm sense, is really helpful, especially in a time where knowing what's coming up in a macrocosm sense is harder than it's been maybe in our memory. So here we are, and we've got a schedule on the wall. And it's great to model a little flexibility, and it's good to sit down with your kids and ask their opinion about the things you feel like doesn't matter if you do this first or that next. You put that schedule together, and then after next Shabbat, go over it with them and say what worked and what didn't. Somebody's pushing really hard for 15-minute later bedtime. Okay, we can try doing that. Modeling flexibility within structure is useful, but structure isn't only about our scheduling. I've been getting a lot of questions from parents about, is it okay to not worry about bedtimes at all? My kids are, we're all a little bit freaked out. Can we sleep in a family bed? Is it okay to just, have like Shabbat morning cereal every morning? Here's what I want to say. Once or twice, sure. But if you do that for a bunch of days, it's going to be very hard to rein it back into the kind of home that you want to have. And the rules that you have about how we treat each other, how we speak to each other, the respect that we show, the privacy that we offer, that shouldn't change, because our kids are learning, but also because the more we relax our rules, the more we scare our kids. That really triggers kids to feel more anxious, like, wow, things really are upside down. My parents really don't have a handle on things like they used to. So I'm going to encourage you to still feed nutritious food and have some screen time limits, even though those limits might reasonably change now. I'm going to encourage you to still have bedtimes and wake up times, to still have chores. This is a great time to do Adulting University and make sure that all the things that you want your kids to know when someday, God willing, they leave the house, they're learning to do now. And it should take some of the pressure and the burden off you once they learn to do it well. I know it's faster and easier to do it ourselves, but this is really valuable time. And lots of parents tell me, I would teach my kids chores, but we're so busy and there's no time. Gotcha. Now there's time. So that's a great thing you can do. So structure is the first thing I wanted to talk to you about. The second thing that I wanted to talk to you about is about those conversations. And we have some slides that I want to share with you. Allison, if you'll put up the first one. For kids who are in preschool or elementary school, it's really good to give them some opportunity to talk about even what they're hearing. So you're asking your kiddo, so what do you know about this? Or what do you think you know? What have you heard? And ask them about their feelings, have empathy for their feelings, and then help them learn to fact check what they've heard. What they heard from their sibling, what they saw on a YouTube video, what they heard someone on video chat say to you, because fears and feelings aren't facts. And one of the things that maturing teaches us is that we can use facts to try to inform our fears and feelings. However, don't keep it on all the time. Because if you thought maybe before that kids were listening to everything we said, and we know that they do, now they don't even have a choice, right? They have to be listening to everything that we're saying because we're all in the same space. So I really want you to think about destination watching. Turn it on to get the information you want, and then turn it off. Put on something, if you're going to have the TV on or the media on, turn on something lighthearted, something inspirational, something uplifting, or actually turn it off. That's also great modeling for our kids. And even though they may seem to be attending to something else, that drip, drip, drip of news, of fear really can impact them. But once you've talked to kids about what they think they know, once you've fact checked, then you can have a conversation with empathy for their feelings. Please don't tell kids how to feel. Don't tell each other how to feel or how not to feel, because first of all, it doesn't work, right? If somebody tells you, just relax, do you relax or do you get more upset? If somebody tells you, there's nothing to be scared of, well, really all you hear is, I don't think your feelings are reasonable. They're not valid. That's not empathy. Empathy is, I see you. I hear what you're feeling. And let's see if we can help some of the facts inform your feelings. Let's go to the next slide, Allison, because the next thing you can talk to kids about is there's some stuff you can do. How do you protect yourself and other people? So talking to our kids about 20-second hand washing, encouraging them to make a music video for the family about their favorite 20 seconds of their favorite song while they wash their hands, how to cover their sneeze and their cough and then wash right afterwards, and keep reminding them, your face is beautiful the way it is. Don't touch it, or wash your hands right before and right after you do. Share your ideas and your humor and your voice, but not your food, not your drinks, not your phones, not your toys, only in the same home. We can't be having play dates as much as we want to. Things have to be virtual right now because we have to protect each other. We're staying away from each other because we love each other, because we care about each other. Pikuach nefesh. This is our chance to very literally save each other's souls. There's some research about 2 different villages in a remote country where aid workers went in to teach kids better hand washing to prevent foodborne illness. And so they said in one village to the children, between the time you go to the bathroom and you eat, you must wash your hands. It will keep you from getting sick. And in a neighboring village, they said to the children, between the time you go to the bathroom and you eat, you must wash your hands. It will keep your grandparents and your younger siblings from getting sick. In the village where they told the children how to protect other people, we saw quadruple the rates of hand washing. Kids want to know that they're making a difference to protect others. And lastly, you protect yourself and others by paying attention to how you're feeling. And if you don't feel good, let an adult know. That's if you don't feel good because you're nervous, and it's if you don't feel good because your body's getting sick. Will you go to the next slide for me, Allison? Because now I want us to remind kids there's stuff we can do that we can control that keeps us safe out of the house, like not getting too close to other people. At 10 feet, make eye contact, and at 6 feet, stop and say hello, because personal contact helps us and it helps other people, but we have to do it from a distance. Pet your own animal, but not other people's animals, because those are surfaces that we can touch and bring coronavirus into our own homes. Talk about what bothers you with an adult that you trust, because that is how we learn how to handle things. And that's where we get to the third strategy I really want to talk to you about before we stop for questions. Will you go to my last slide, please? How do you handle the uncertainty? You can ask for support from your grown-ups. Let them know how you're feeling and what you're feeling. If you're on social media or your parent is, step away from it. Give yourself a break, because if you're somebody with empathy, if you feel stuff when you watch other people feel it, if when you watch a TV show or a movie, you can kind of feel how it feels to be the person you're watching, well, then you're going to be feeling a lot of what other people are feeling. And right now, that can feel like a lot. Remind your kids, if their body is feeling healthy, use it. Play and exercise, because that makes us stronger and boosts our immune system. Sleep helps, healthy food helps, and so does drinking a lot of water. But the biggest risk to kids right now is not becoming sick from COVID-19, although it is certainly carrying coronavirus to other people. The biggest risk to kids, not preschoolers, by the way, they're used to being homeschooled, many of them, and they do just fine. But when we're talking about older kids, especially middle schoolers and high schoolers, they are at real risk from social isolation, from symptoms of anxiety and depression, whether or not they've ever experienced those symptoms before. So a very practical thing you can do, you go to the last resource that we have, Allison, is use a list. And actually, I've just flipped to the visual, that's the very last one, and I'm going to tell you what that one just said. In this first column, what helps you feel better? Print this out, and we're going to make it available to you on the Momentum site and on my site as well. Print this out, and for each person in the family, have them make a list of everything that makes them feel better, even if it's yelling at their sibling or grabbing a toy. Then scratch out the ones that aren't good for you or other people. And in the second, put a list of all of those neutral or positive coping mechanisms. And parents, remember that your coping mechanisms and theirs, some of them might not be healthy in excess, like playing a video game, but as a distraction or for a certain amount of time, that's a totally reasonable, neutral or positive coping mechanism. And then circle the ones you can do while you're social distancing. Put that in your last column and keep growing that column. Add to it every time you notice that someone in your home is doing something that seems to make them feel better, like laying on the ground and taking some deep breaths, petting the pet if you have one, or organizing a closet, anything at all. Put it on that list. Every time you're feeling uncertainty, come back to this list. Take a mental break by doing something that gives you something different and something positive to focus on. You can take these slides away for now, Allison, and we'll come back to faces, because seeing people's faces is really helpful. I'm hoping to see Adrian's face in a moment, because if you have questions that you're ready to talk about, let's do that. I have a few more things that I want to say, but if there are questions, we'll answer them now, and then I'll get to those at the end.
Yeah. First of all, can I just say that I wish you were my mother?
Okay, I'm in. I feel like you're mine too. It'll work out great.
I'm sure your kids don't feel like that, darling, but man, oh man, just your voice is making me feel better. Okay, your first question, and the chat room has gone insane with questions for you. So let's begin with number one. How do we manage our college-age students' anxiety? Not about getting sick, but about being home and doing her classes electronically and not being with her friends.
So there's two things there. And also I do want to just stop for 1 second, Adrian, and pin, what do we do about worrying about our kids who are away from home? We'll come back to it, because that's something I'm hearing about a lot. For our seniors in high school who are about to miss graduation and other hard things, for our college students who are now home, we got a couple of things going on here. One, our college students might be used to living on their own a little bit more, and it's hard to come back into structure and chores and somebody else being in charge of you. So recognizing those things and making sure you get some adults and college-age student alone time, even if it's after everyone else is in bed, to really hash out some rules of the road. What's going to work for them? What's going to work for you? What's going to make for a respectful situation that everyone can feel like they're getting their needs met? As far as online learning, it's hard, but it's an incredibly important lifetime skill. This won't be the only time that people who prefer to do things in person are asked to do them remotely. That's going to happen increasingly through their lives. So don't worry about that. These are important skills to build. And I want to remind us as parents that uncomfortable is not unsafe. And what we're doing right now is experience a lot of discomfort, actually, to make things safer. That feeling we get in our stomachs when we're uncomfortable, or our children are of any age, can feel unsafe, but it isn't. And teaching our kids to manage discomfort is one of the most important jobs we have.
Wow. Wow. So just repeat that one more time, because I think that's powerful. Just because something feels uncomfortable does not imply that it's unsafe.
Right. Uncomfortable is not the same thing as unsafe. And this time in our lives makes it more clear than ever that sometimes uncomfortable is the safest thing we can do.
It's certainly the only route to growth, isn't it? Okay, question number 2. My son, a college senior, has just heard that his college graduation has been canceled, and he still doesn't have a job lined up. I can't imagine that there's going to be robust hiring out there between now and September. How do I help him to deal with this sad time and his upcoming lack of independence and financial independence while he's living far away from his best friends in college?
The first thing I want to do is impart to everybody a lesson that I was just taught by my 15-year-old who's away for the year in Israel. He calls me with his frustration and his fear, and I kept trying to tell him what to do. And our conversations were becoming more and more conflict-based. And finally, he said to me, not looking for solutions, just empathy. And now every time he brings me a problem, I say empathy or solutions. And then I said this recently, and a mom said, or intervention. So say to your adult child, are you asking for empathy, solutions, or intervention? And let them choose. 85% of the time, your teens and your adult kids are going to say empathy. So start with empathy, but I say be transparent and ask them what they're looking for. And for you, I have so much empathy. It's so difficult to watch our kids. If your child says solutions, you might be thinking, Dr. G, I don't have any. You do. Ask your child to be a creative problem solver, to say, hey, I think you're right. I think the traditional jobs that you were thinking of won't be in high demand for the next 4 or 5 months. What do you think will be? What problems do you see cropping up that you think you're well placed to try to help a company or a community solve?
Oh, you're absolutely right. Actually, all of this advice would be perfect for husbands and wives too, wouldn't it?
Empathy or solutions or intervention, which did you want? Women
But
want
you're defying the stereotype. You're defying the stereotype because usually the man who needs that information.
Not that simple. We can't
Yeah.
steer.
No, we cannot. Number 3, what if you have 2 teenagers who completely don't want to do anything you suggest for coping and they don't want to schedule? Oh, there's an original idea. Isn't that what it is to be a teenager anyway?
Wait, I'm sorry. A teenager who doesn't like your ideas? Right. Okay.
And they don't do anything you suggest for coping, and they don't want your schedule. Thank you very much.
Right, obviously, and say that's totally fine within these boundaries. So the boundaries are, you've got to shower every day, you've got to tell me what are the 3 indicators that I'll know that your mood isn't being negatively affected by the fact that you've flipped your days and nights. You've got to show up to these 3 family meals a week. You've got to participate in this one family activity every week. And you need to tell me what you will do and what metrics I can hold you to know that you're okay. Because since teenagers have more receptors for oxytocin than younger children or adults, they need more social interaction to fill those receptors. So they are more at risk for anxiety and depression when they don't get it. Now, your kid may be handling that really well on FaceTime in the middle of the night with all their friends, but how will you know? So ask them what the metrics are, ask them when they will get their chores done that they do still need to do, and how you can hold them to it. Come up with a plan with them. If they're not mature enough for those conversations, then say, hey, for now, despite the fact that your biologic age is 17, you're showing me 13. So I'm treating you 13. If you can X, Y, and Z to show me 17, I'll treat you 17.
Oh, that is so brilliant. Now, I don't want you to be my mother. I want you to be my mother for my children. Could you mother?
Your kids don't, I promise.
Oh, okay. All right. Number 4. I have a high school senior who feels like his life has been taken away from him and has become very difficult in the household. And nothing I say or do helps, and sometimes makes it worse. And I am at a loss as to what to do to help him. Do you have any ideas? By the way, he said a little while ago, I wish I was in school right now.
So I guess that feels a little good. My 5th grader also told me today that he likes real school better than virtual school. And I have a senior in high school as well. And I have a lot of empathy for him, for lost milestones, and for you as well. I want to talk for just a minute, Adrienne, if I can, about change. Change has 6 parts. The first is loss. Even if you get something you want, if it represents a change, your brain tries to figure out, what am I losing first? And then distrust. Is this change really going to happen? Is it really necessary? Do I have to do this? And then as we start to accept that the change is happening, discomfort. What don't I like about this? Am I going to be able to handle this? This isn't so good. Then choices. And that's the hump you're trying to get your son through. It sounds like he might still have some distrust, but mostly discomfort. You're trying to get him to see that, as my mom used to say, if you're still breathing, you have options. You may not like them, but you at least have them. And it's time to make choices, because choices leads to engagement with his friends, engagement with mentors, engagement with your community, whatever it is. And engagement is what leads to reunification. So some reunification for someone living in your home, you can mandate. You got to show up for Shabbat dinner or whatever it is. But some reunification needs to come on its own. So he can start planning with his friends, their graduation in 2021, how they're all going to come back in June from wherever they are, and they're going to have the senior week that they were planning. Maybe they'll want to by then and maybe they won't, but they can start thinking about that and imagining what this is going to look like. As well as, first, just empathy. Whatever he does, you can have empathy for his feelings while still having good boundaries for what behavior is acceptable in your home. If you don't have those good boundaries, you are saying, you're right, nothing matters. And everything matters. Shalom bayit matters. So you can have empathy for your kids while holding the line, just like you've done before. Yes, I know it's frustrating that you're grounded. You're angry that you're grounded. You're ashamed that you're grounded. You're still grounded. I hope you'll make a different choice next time, but I have real empathy for how you're feeling. I've felt that way too.
Man, you really are. This is brilliant. Okay, so what's your best advice for dealing with teenagers who under normal conditions want nothing to do with their families?
Empathy. I totally get it. That's a normal developmental stage. Mark Twain said, when I was 14, my old man was the stupidest person I'd ever met. When I was 21, I was amazed at how much he'd learned in 7 years. The job of someone in their second decade of life is to push away from their nuclear family and figure out who they are when they stand on their own. As we know in our tradition, you're expected to do that while still honoring your family. And it's hard. It's some of the hardest work we have to do. So you can have empathy for it while not changing the line, while still having the same boundaries. You can show flexibility, but you gotta have good boundaries around how you treat other people. And if you need a little bit more motivation to do that, our kids are still, as teens, learning from us, how should I let other people who love me when I'm an adult treat me? So if you never want to walk into your adult child's house and hear someone speaking to them in a terrible way, you can't let them speak terribly now. We have to hold the line and say, this is what love is, and this is what love tolerates, and here, love holds the line.
You know, Deb, some people have been asking where the gold is in all of this uncertainty, and the things you're talking about today, the way to create peace in the home, the Shalom bayit you're talking about, is so salient for all times that I'm almost grateful that we were put in a position where we had to find you and had to get your input on this. Okay, so the next one. Ironically, this is the hardest on introverts who need alone time to recharge. What is a good way to get that when you're around other people all day? My anxiety is ramped up and I'm getting really irritable.
I totally understand what you're talking about. And I'm an extreme extrovert. Spoiler alert. I know,
Really?
it's hard to imagine, right? But I think that for anybody at any end of any spectrum right now, any spectrum, it's really difficult. Being in the middle would be easier. My mom says everything in moderation. But here we are at either end, boundaries. So if you need to say, hey, I have office hours at this time, but I also have minucha, rest time, in which I can't be disturbed unless there is bloodshed, actual spurting bloodshed, not like a slow flow that you could just stop it yourself, between this time and this time, or noise canceling headphones. Or maybe your family gets to have a great movie night. You pull them and you find out a movie they're all really excited to see, and then you don't watch. Whatever it is, no matter how small your home, carve out a little space that when you walk into it, it's only yours. Put up fabric around it if that makes you feel better. Play music there that helps you tune everybody else out. Make that list that I mentioned of your coping strategies and put stars by the one that really actually soothe your frayed nerves.
This is great. Okay, this one's painful. How do I explain to my teenage daughter that she can't see her boyfriend right now?
With empathy and not changing the rules. One of the things that we want to do so much for our kids is make this go away. But what we are teaching them is that they have the opportunity to have real impact. Not someday, not when they're grown-ups, not later, now. So we're calling on them to do something hard. And hey, you know who's great at calling on people when they're 17 years old to do things that are ridiculous? The military,
Huh.
firefighting academies. People do unbelievable things at this age if we help them understand the why. So help her understand the why, and don't tell her how to feel. Don't tell her the relationship will survive it. Don't tell her that everything will be okay in the end. Tell her that this is something really, really difficult. You're sorry she has to go through it, and she can. She can do hard things. And then ask her what you can do to support her while she's dealing with this difficulty.
Empathy seems to be the answer to everything. Empathy in the military. All right. One last
A
thing.
sentence never said before.
Yeah,
Yes.
really. What is Dr. G's handle on Facebook and Instagram?
Okay, so I hope that, Allison, if you're typing in the chat, if you put them up, that would be great. Instagram, it's, oh, actually maybe on both, at Ask Dr. D-O-C-T-O-R-G. It's really easy to find me there, and also on the web. You know, Adrienne, before we end, I want to just push back on something you said, and I think it's so right. There are so many things bad that are coming out of our day-to-day, and so many things good. We will be different at the end of this. Resilience, which is what you asked me to talk about, is not about bouncing back to our former shape. That's true for Rubbermaid containers. For people, it's about going through something and using it to become the best version of ourselves, including that experience. And as a Jewish community, we have a lot of practice at this. So please use all the technology at your disposal. Use all of the Jewish texts. Use all of the people that you know, the music that you love, the people that you're stuck with, the people that you're far away from, and your own skills and interests and fears, and really take this chance to get to know yourself better, because you're stronger than you know.